Good day, each and every one of us. I am Mika Joy as Eugenio, and I am going to report about the violence. So these are the table of contents which I gonna share to you: the violence and youth, the violence and gender, violence and law, the violence and ideology, the violence and religion, the justification of violence, and the effects of violence. So violence in youth. Various man-made events threaten human security across the globe and leave especially young people with a feeling of powerlessness. The following quotation includes many aspects affecting youths who have not yet found their space and position in society. It also highlights circumstances, especially those of youths in many African countries, which explains why youth can so easily be manipulated into seeing violence as the only means of gaining what seems to be due to them. Most of men across in the globe made events threaten human security daw, especially the girls. Pinapafeel nila na weak ang girls and powerless. And kaya naman nakikita ng ilang tao na walang matanggap na posisyon o walang matanggap na trabaho ang mga kababaihan. Ang circumstances na ito ay nagkakaroon sa bansang Africa. People in Africa always manipulated into violence, and sa mga kababaihan roon ay mas madaling magkaroon ng anak o pamilya. Kaya naman naging mahirap ang pagsusulba ng problemang ito sa bansang Africa. And their actions reinforce structures and beliefs that created inequity, undemocratic political space, and violence in all its various forms. Then next slide. Violence witnessed from a young age can have a dramatic effect on youths, and contributing factors such as poverty, lack of parental care, support and affections, absence of a caregiver, for example, in one-parent families, along with inconsistent discipline are the most susceptible to be influenced by violent images through the media of televisions or the internet and video games. So, ito yung mga violenteng nakikita ng isang bata mula sa kanyang lugar na kinalakihan o sa kanyang environment ay magkakaroon ng epekto o impluensya na hanggang siya ay lumaki. And then, contributing factors such as poverty, lack of parental care, sani ito na may posibilidad na lumaki ang isang bata sa violenteng mga bagay dahil lumaki siya sa isang violenteng lugar. Parents need to focus and give time to their child so that you can know what they are doing, and you can discipline your child if there's something he or she doing. Example, your child is being addicted on video games, or they see a violent images in internet or computer. So you're gonna teach them, you're gonna discipline them. So, children who are raised by both parents consistently present caregivers and receive proper affection are more than likely to grow into non-violent individuals. It is believed that a child needs to bond with its parents during the early ages of childhood. As a result, the child has a greater chance of not growing into a violent person. So, it is better to raise by both parents sa isang bata. You can care them in love and you can teach them. Effects that the child grows in a violent places or a violent environment, or a lack of parental care. Many children who do not receive the affection they need from their parents often to turn to other sources to fill that void. An example, peer group, gang, or clique. Children being copycats, it does depends highly on the kind of group to determine how the child develops. So the next topic is the violence and gender. Violence and gender, number one, is sex. Refers only to the biological and physiological differences that define men and women. Sex is therefore only a part of gender, the natural foundation on which rules can be attributed. For example, only women can give birth, only men can impregnate. Women have breasts, usually capable of breastfeeding. Men have testicles while women do not. So sex, a private part that can identify if it is a boy or a girl. The cycle of people is biological, then given by birth, and that will cannot change. While gender can be cultural, it will be learned through socialization and can be changed. Number two, gender. Gender refers to the socially constructed rules, rights, and responsibilities, power relations, activities, and attributes that society deems appropriate for men or women. In other words, gender is socially learned behavior and expectations that distinguish between masculinity and femininity. Examples: women and men can be engineers, nurses, caregivers, and presidents. And second, men and women can take care of kids. Every gender can take responsibility while working it. Male learn by process sa mga bagay na needed to work. Like for example, sa isang pamilya, yung isang lalaki ang nasa bahay, siya yung nagbabantay ng bata at nagta-take care sa bahay, while ang babae naman ang nagtatrabaho. Pwedeng-pwede yun. And in society, both women and men can give an attribute in society by expectations that can distinguish between masculinity and femininity. So gender roles are not static or universal. They are learned through the process of socialization. They can be changed and vary from culture to culture, from society to society. So yun nga, nalalearn yung isang bagay na we needed to work on it. In this light, gender is a practice that is produced and reproduced through social relations. Violence against women and girls is on numerous occasions a product of society's images of manhood, or what we call patriarchal ideology, which often encourages male power and control over women. The hypothesis of Galtung and many others that men tend to be more violent than women, or that violence is based on hormonal or tend to be more violent than women, or that violence is based on hormonal or genetic reasons, have repeatedly failed or proven weak. Gender-based violence is described as any act of violence against a person based on the person's sex, mostly towards girls and the women, but increasingly against men. So this includes threats or violence acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty. So nangyayari ngayon sa ating environment, mostly of men, they control over the women. Sa mga balibalita ngayon ay maraming kababaihan ang nakakaranas ng violence against the men, na sinasaktan ito. Kabilang nito ay ang mga mag-aasawa. Sinasaktan ng mga kababaihan dahil sa ginagamitan ng lalaki ang kanilang lakas. Hindi lamang sa mag-asawa ang nakakaranas nito, pati na din ang mga bata. Hindi naman natin makakaila that men are strong than women. Men are aggressive in certain categories of crime. So these are due to a combinations of factors such as the breakdown of law and ordered drug abuse, displaced population, loss of income and family support, and rape by military personnel, rape mostly against females, as part of the wartime strategy of conquest has multiple meanings and sources. So yun nga, men are stronger than women, na nagiging sanhi yung nagkakaroon ng rape, ganun, nagkakaroon ng violence against women na sinasaktan ito. Then, these are the gender-based violence, the symbolic, the constitutive, the rationally. So symbolic, rape of female enemy represents conquest and power over the enemy's national and cultural identity. Constitutive, the soldier or rebel's identity needs legitimacy as it helps to build. Third, rationally, a dominating masculinity needed for warfare, the perpetrator in relation to the subjugated women and to the mutilated, weakened enemy, men. Gender-based violence is both a cause and consequence of HIV infection and AIDS due to the following. Female circumcision or harm and injury to one's body can lead to HIV infection when using a single blade for different persons, even if only one person carries the HIV virus. The fear of violence may prevent a woman from insisting on the use of condom or other safe sex methods. So dahil nga sa mahina ang lakas ng mga kababaihan, kaya majority of women hindi nila maproprotektahan ang kanilang sarili. Kaya it is very sad for us women to know this kind of issue. Nasasaktan tayo kapag naririnig natin ang mga ganitong bagay, ganitong mga pangyayari. So our next topic is violence and law. The following statements may be food for thought. Governments regulate the use of violence through legal systems governing individuals and political authorities. This includes the establishment of laws and courts, the police and military. Civil societies authorize some amount of violence exercised through police and military power to maintain the status quo and enforce laws. Prevent the violence, we need to have a law. So yung gobyerno is gumagawa ng paraan, gumagawa ng isang batas na nakakatulong sa bawat tao to secure them, na labi na sa mga kababaihan. We need to have this law to have a justice, a fair justice. Malaking tulong ito sa atin bilang Pilipino. Hindi lamang nakakatulong sa mga kababaihan, kundi rin sa komunidad, to maintain the peace, the unity sa bawat tao. German political theorist Hannah Arendt noted, violence can be justifiable, but it will never be legitimate. So in the 20th century, the actions of governments may have killed more than 260 million of their own people through police brutality, execution, massacre, slave labor camps, and sometimes through intentional famine. So our next topic is about the violence and ideology. Nationalism as an ideology affirms the existence of people or nations whose members share a common history and destiny, the identity. Nationalist sentiments might lead individuals to see their own group or nation as superior to other groups. Challenges to one's nations are often regarded as a threat to one's very existence. In this light, nationalism can act as a cause of conflict, as several historic examples prove. For instance, the genocide on Jews in World War II, the genocide on Mali Tutsi in Rwanda, 1996. Anti-capitalists assert that the ideology of capitalism is violent. They may use the term structural violence to describe the systematic ways in which a given social structure or institution kills people slowly by preventing them from meeting their basic needs. For example, the deaths caused by disease because of lack of medicine. Free market supporters argue that is violently enforced state laws intervening in markets which cause many of the problems anti-capitalists attribute to structural violence. So these are the group of people who are against of the other Filipinos, against their beliefs. Kaya naman nangyayari as nagkakaroon ng conflict between the groups. Like for example, yung mga rebelde is hindi sila sang-ayon sa gobyerno. Palagi silang against sa mga dinidecide ng government. So ang nangyayari is nagkakaroon ng gera, nagkakaroon ng war, nagkakaroon ng violence sa isang society, sa isang nation dahil sa hindi sila magka-unite, hindi sila magkaintindihan. So our next topic is all about the violence and religion. Religious ideologies have been the cause of interpersonal violence throughout history. However, religion itself is seldom a genuine reason for violent conflicts. Even though claims are frequently made to this effect, still, religious ideologies often falsely accuse others of violence and unrighteousness, and take it as the reason or excuse for their own execution of violence, such as the ancient blood libel against Jews, the medieval accusation of casting witchcraft spells against women, and current accusation of satanic ritual against daycare center owners and others. So, sinasabi dito na the religion itself is a reason for violent conflicts. Some of religious leaders or ideologues often falsely accuse others of violence and unrighteousness. Sa religion is nagkakaroon din ng conflict. Like for instance na there's a person na kasama sa religious group or religious leader na nag-accuse ng isang tao that nag-accuse siya like na that person is casting witchcraft spells against women, then nag-accuse din siya ng satanic ritual abuse sa taong yun. Kaya naman nagkakaroon na yung taong yun ay may galit siya sa kanyang may galit siya sa mga religious na leader or religious na tao. God of peace. Religion must begin its search for God from the basic context of the world. Violence, our world, is addicted to violence and death. We have armed our world beyond imagination, and despite the end of the Cold War, continue to maintain nuclear weapons that can destroy billions of people and the planet itself. Meanwhile, over 35 wars are currently being waged, and over 40,000 children die around the world each day from starvation. So sinasabi dito that religion must begin its search for God. We need to pray for God. We need to pray to God na He will save us from this world, because our world right now is addicted to violence and death. We need to have God. We need His help to provide the things that we need. Like right now, there's over 40,000 people or children die around the world each day from starvation. So we need to pray to God that He will provide all things that we need, and He will protect us from the war. Is justification of violence. Justification of violence. The question to be answered here is there such a thing as good violence? Gandhi once said, I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does it is permanent. However, there are many reasons people use to justify the application of violence. Some justifications for using violence and possible alternatives or way towards a solution are listed below. Self-defense means using violence in defense for survival in situations where there is danger of harm to one's own life. An alternative could be acquiring non-violent means to defend oneself. We need to have this kind of thing na we have to defend ourselves. We need to do things that hindi tayo masasaktan, hindi tayo masasaktan ng ibang tao, na masurvive tayo sa isang situations where there is danger of harm na mangyayari sa ating life, na mangyayari sa ating ito yung dapat natin gawin, like most importantly to us girls, women, ladies, kailangan nating dumepensa. Lack of control. Describes someone lacking control over her or his action that might harm another person. In other words, the aggressive behavior of someone against me is the reason for my violent reaction. This explanation shows how the individual me rejects responsibility for their own violent actions. Ito yung nawawalan ka ng control sa action mo or sa behavior mo or the way you talk back sa another person na kausap mo, because nawawalan ka ng control because of your anger. Siguro nagiging aggressive yung behavior of someone against sayo. The reason is nagiging violent ka, like hindi mo nagustuhan yung sinabi niya sa'yo, kaya naman nagiging aggressive yung behavior mo towards that people. Cost-benefit analysis of violence. This indicates that the result of violence act is a personal gain, a benefit for the one acting violently. For instance, material things, hierarchical promotion, increase in power, having fun. Sometimes acting violently is just a fun distraction. A way out could be try to make the person acting violently realize that violence is avoidable, as whatever can be gained by applying violence can also be achieved non-violently. Like for example, you have that kind of classmate na palagi kanyang inaaway, palagi kanyang inaasar, palagi kanyang dinidistract or minumura. Tapos ikaw na ayaw mo ng ganon, at ikaw na ayaw, na hindi ka sanay na ganon, na ang nangyayari, nagiging magkaaway kayong dalawa, nagiging masama yung loob mo sa kanya. Kaya naman, di lahat ng funny jokes ay dapat mong sabihin sa isang tao. Labi na hindi mo siya close. Another example is, yung inaway mo o yung inasar mo ay nakita mo, then humingi ka ng sorry kasi nakonsensya ka. Kasi may malaking posibilidad na yung inaway mo na yun is may malaking galit sa'yo at saka baka may gagawin siyang masama sa'yo na ikakapahamak mo. So, yun, nakonsensya ka, nanghingi ka ng sorry sa kanya, then pwedeng ma-achieve yung non-violent dahil sa pagre-reconcile mo sa taong iyon. The difference of the other. This means perceiving the other as not having the same value as a human being as me, the violent person. Dehumanizing the victim. Thinking of the person as less valuable is often used as a tactical tool to manipulate people to apply violence. The use of culture. Culture is often used as a reason or excuse for applying violence, but everything, including culture, moves and changes. Yet, cultures tend to be held frozen and unchanging even if these practices harm people. So the last slide is the effects of violence. Violent conflicts generally have greater impacts on innocent citizens, particularly on the poor and marginalized, than on those holding responsibility for them. The cause of conflict is a tool which attempts to calculate the price of conflict to the human race. The idea is to examine this cause not only in terms of thefts, casualties, and the economic cost borne by the people involved, but also calculate social effects, developmental cost, environmental destruction, and strategic cost of violent conflicts. The approach therefore considers direct cost of conflict, human deaths, expenditure, destruction of land and infrastructure, indirect cost of conflict impact on a society, for instance, migration, humiliation, growth of extremism, and lack of civil society. So these are the effects of violence in the environmental, the depletion, the pollution, and the other damage to the diversity and symbiosis. The humans were killed, were wounded, crippled, raped, infected with diseases, displaced, addicted to drugs. In society, damage and destructions of material, infrastructure, buildings, and in our world, damage to material and infrastructure. And in time, delayed violence like landmines, transmitted violence, hatred, and revenge over generations. And lastly, in our culture, irreversible damage to cultural heritage, construction, monuments, and materials. So that's it. Thank you for listening.